Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the December 5th, 2022 Troy City Council meeting. We are honored this evening to have Rabbi Alicia Harris from Congregation Shur Tikva to lead us in our invocation. So Rabbi Alicia, I see you already coming forward. Please rise for our invocation, and then after our invocation, we have a special treat for our Pledge of Allegiance.
Holy One of blessing, the one who inspires, source of life and power, may you bless and protect the leaders of our nation and all of those who exercise authority in keeping with our laws in our country and here in Troy. May the Holy One bring strength to all who work in our communities, and on behalf of all of those who need our support, strengthening them in body and spirit and rewarding their efforts with success. May those in leadership act in accordance with the rabbinic insight that the truly strong are those who raise up the fallen, the truly honored are those who honor their caregivers, and the truly wise are those who acknowledge the vital work of all of our teachers. We turn to our leaders for inspiration and hope, direction and guidance. May they lead us in paths of peace, build communal cohesion through both word and deed, and bring about the blessing we pray for at the conclusion of each prayer service. May the one who brings peace bring peace here, to this place, to our community, and in our homes and in our hearts, to which we say, Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Alicia. Please remain standing, and at this time I'd like to call forward the Scout Pack 1720 from Barnard Elementary to come forward and lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. All right. Pack 1720, Scout sign. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Scouts. You did a great job, and it was great speaking with you before the meeting this evening. Have a good, safe night, everybody, okay? Thank you. I'll officially call the December 5th, 2022 Troy City Council meeting to order and ask for the roll call from Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham? Here. Councilmember Brooks? Here. Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga? Here. Councilmember Eric Segal? Here. Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
All present this evening. First up are certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have two this evening. C1 is the independent auditor's communication with those charged with governance. And I don't know if we're going to roll right into C2 as well with the audit presentation, but both are going to be introduced by Rob Malzek, our Chief Financial Officer. And just as a reminder, there were two late submittal items for both C1 and C2 on the table and out posted. Hi, Rob.
Hi. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. Appreciate being here today. Again, we have our annual review of our audit, and it's from the outside auditors. The partner from Raymond, Nate Balderman, will be here, and he's going to talk about the 3 deliverables, which is the internal control report, the independent auditor's communication with those charged with governance, and then finally our annual comprehensive financial report. So I'm going to turn it over to Nate in a minute here, and then after Nate's done, Deanne Irby, our controller, she's going to talk about our expenditures and also an update on our grants, because that's been a big deal in the last 2 years. And I'm going to talk about revenues and also our fund balance. And I know we've had a lot of sessions lately, and Bob Bruner's gone through a lot of these, but what's different in this one is we still have our 10-year look, and what we're going to do is just have the updated year for you to see. And so you're very familiar with these slides, but thought we should still stick with the cadence of going through this. So I'm going to turn it over to Nate now.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. Want to thank you once again. We enjoy working with the city and the long relationship that we've had with the city. Just a quick update from an audit perspective. They're going to present all the numbers. I'm just here to do the simple stuff, the actual results. As you said, you have the 3 deliverables. They are final as of a few hours ago. We were able to finalize things. I believe you've had a draft to review. But those documents are final, so we finished up all our documentation, finished all that up today. The documents this year, you do have a separate report. It's the thinnest report that's there on internal controls. This report, in the past, usually you either get, if you have a single audit, it's a part of that single audit report. But because you did not have the federal awards audit this year, not the requirement for that, we were able to issue just this separate letter. The letter itself is an internal control report. Under standards, we're required to review internal controls as a part of our audit. It's not an opinion on internal controls. It's kind of one of those, if things come to our attention, though, we're required under standards to report material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. The good thing on this is all it is the report. There are no findings or internal control matters to report. So a clean report this year. On the financial statements themselves, when you look at the report, I will say it's formatted a little bit different, but it's just a change in standards, set it so that we now have to, or the report language is a little bit different. Actually makes a little bit more sense now. The actual audit opinion is at the very front. When you're looking at that opinion, you don't have to go digging a page and a half into it to get the opinion, but the opinion is unmodified, means the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. So it's what you're looking for. It's a clean opinion. And then the last report that we give is this independent auditor's communication with those charged with governance. That letter is our standard communication, just covers all those things under standards that we're required to report back to you, just different matters. There really isn't anything too significantly different. There's estimates in there. There's some new things that we did implement this year in terms of standards. GASB 87 was, I think, they would all agree, a lot of fun. It was a lot of work for actually, when you look at the numbers, you'll be like, you spent how much time doing that? But it was one of the more, probably in recent memory, since we had to implement OPEB standards on reporting for that, probably one of the more time-consuming standards to implement. So there are some new disclosures related to that, but the financial statements have those updated as it relates to leases. So, but overall, it was a clean audit. It was in terms of working through things with management. You had a the team was new, but definitely enjoyed working with the group, and look forward to working them in the future. So,
Great. Thank you. Well, all right.
All right, so this is very similar to what we've done in the past for you. This is a 10-year trend of our revenues, and when you look at the revenues, in 2022, we were just a little bit under budget. And the reason for that is two things. One, we actually got more revenue in for state shared revenue. We were about 1.4 million positive on from the state because of the economy was much better than when we budgeted those numbers originally. And then secondly, we continue to get more personal property tax in than what we budget. We're very conservative with that budgeting. The offset, though, is a major loss in investment revenue. It's all a paper loss. And what that is when we, each fiscal year, we have to market our investments. And I talked about this a year ago, but it got more extreme. The interest rates have gone up so high that the investments that we have, when you mark them to the market, they're marked down. So we actually had a $2.8 million temporary loss in those numbers for this fiscal year. This is a breakdown by group, and you can see property taxes is our biggest item, which all of you know that. Secondly, you can see the intergovernmental revenue, that's the state shared revenue, and that's where we're above budget. by over $2 million. And then if you see below the zero there, investment earnings, we lost approximately $2.8 million in that item. And then this is just a pie chart to show you the general fund revenues by source. And again, 62% of its property tax, 22% intergovernmental revenue, and then 13% charges for services, which again is primarily our recreation center revenue. And again, sticking out like a sore thumb is that 5% of investment income. And again, this is just a temporary loss. There's nothing lost in, it's just at that point in time, the balance sheet point in time, as of June 30th, we have that loss. And so that will work through itself when one of two things happen. One, we sell the investment or when it matures, or two, when interest rates go back down. And now I'm going to pass it over to Deanne for expenditures.
Hi, good evening. So as Rob said, I'm going to talk about the expenditures as of June 30th. So the amended budget was $63 million for general fund. Actual expenditures came in at $58 million. So we were $4.9 million under budget, which is a great thing. It's better than in the other direction. The largest part is public safety. And that is we budget for every position that public safety needs and wants, and your body has authorized that. As you all know, it is difficult in staffing to find qualified people or just people to be police officers. So that's why $2.1 million of our budget, under budget, comes from lack of staffing or lack of ability to staff. It's not for lack of wanting or budget means. We just weren't able to find them and fill those positions. In addition to that, there is Public Works came in about $34,000 under budget. Engineering and Planning, $278,000, and Recreation and Culture was about $894,000 under budget. And part of that is also because we're just coming out of pandemic, we're ramping up our recreation programs again. Citizens are getting comfortable with coming back in and having their children and people, exercise and play together. So we expect the programming and so forth to recreation to go back to its normal levels soon. And then this is just another quick little breakout. 61% of our budget, of course, is public safety, police and fire, 15% general government, roads and streets, the 5%, community development 7%, and 12% for parks and recreation. As Nate and Rob had alluded to a bit earlier, our single audit, that is where if we spend $750,000 or more of federal grant money in one fiscal year, then there are additional reporting requirements and additional reviews that the auditor needs to do. Although, as you know, we have received and we've got in the hopper several grants from several different sources with a lot of money on the line. However, we did not spend $750,000 in this last fiscal year. So we did not have to have that update, but we will in this next year. And just kind of recapping, you're aware of the ARPA money, the $8.2 million, for fire truck, road, Stein Park, the Haley Stevens money at $1.5 million for the community projects funding. We've got some MDOT projects coming in for Rochester Road. We're getting more ARPA money through Oakland County. And last and certainly not least is the Community Development Block Grant, which we get each and every year. However, this year we worked with Oakland County to reprogram some of those dollars that we were unable to use during pandemic, and that I believe is going for the inclusive park. So that concludes my presentation.
Thanks, Deanne. And then this is, again, a 10-year look of our revenues and expenditures. And if you look at 2022 in the general fund, we were actually just using only $58,000. So you can see how 2022 is almost even. It was, believe it or not, there's a lot of pluses and minuses where we actually basically broke even. If you look back 1 year, 2021, we had a lot more revenues, and if you remember from last year, that was the CARES Act dollars that we received, and that's why we had such a big variance. And then the rest of the time, you can see it ebbs and flows, and that's why our fund balance will change each year. And lastly, I know this is busy, but we've shown this to you before, and I know we've talked about this a lot in the sessions, but what I wanted to point out was there was one accounting change this year. If you look in 2021 compared to 2022, you can see the restricted is now gone. That's for our budget stabilization account. The GFOA has asked us to move that money from restricted over to unassigned. So our unassigned has actually grown a little bit, and the main reason is because of that restricted moved over. And then the black non-spendable, again, that is for Sanctuary Lake and also the Aquatic Center. And again, that didn't grow much this year. We didn't transfer any money, but I can tell you in fiscal 2023, we're going to have to move some money over to help pay the debt on the golf course. And then we had actually a pretty good year in the Aquatic Center, so I'm not sure we'll have to make any contribution for the Aquatic Center this year. So I will leave you with one last item before, if you have any questions, and this is our award again. For the 25th year in a row, we've received this award, so we're proud of this award. It's a lot of hard work, and I wanted to give a special shout out. He couldn't be here today, but Kyle Veith, you guys met him last year when he was brand new in November, and when Nate mentioned that there was a lot of different GASBs and changes, Kyle worked his tail off on GASB 87, the new lease footnote, and so it was great to have him on staff and really helped us out. So with that, take any questions or concerns you might have.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate that. Questions from council? It was so thorough. No, it was good. It's good to see always where we stand. I mean, I think some of these some of these numbers are hard to comprehend. I mean, you see big dollar signs and you think, well, wait a minute, what are we doing or what can we do? But I appreciate Dan talking a little bit about how, we're budgeting for full public safety because that's a priority obviously for us, but can't always spend all of it if there's not the employees to spend it on, and same with many other departments. I think that was an important thing that we should always point out, but I appreciate everything we have here and do a little light reading just to freshen up on some of these numbers.
Yeah,
but.
and the timing didn't work out exactly great this year. We normally get this to you guys before, and you have over the weekend, and we apologize for that. And but if you have any questions, in between now and Christmas, we'll be here and we'd love to help you out with any questions you may have. So.
I do actually, I did just have a quick clarification. We didn't spend over $750,000 of any of the federal dollars in this past year that required those single audits, but we certainly will this.
That's right.
So how is that going to affect your job and your department? I mean, is that a extra burden?
Right. So then we have to prepare for an additional audit. So what that means is the external auditor, then Nate's team would go out and actually audit those expenditures, and so make sure that we're following all the federal guidelines, were the purchasing practices in place, et cetera. So it was last year when we had the single audit, it was a bigger deal. So we're going to spend our ARPA funds this year. The fire truck's going to come in. That's going to go over the $750,000. We're going to be doing Beach Road with the ARPA funds later this year, so that would make it go over. And then of course we have Stein Park that's going to get started too. What do we call that exactly? What's Kirk call it? The ice skating amenity. That's right, ice skating amenity. So we're gonna. So that's going to get started too. So we're going to go way over. We're going to be in the multi-millions this year and this coming year and next year as well. So you'll see the single audit for several years, and that's why we just wanted to point out why we didn't have one this year, if you were wondering why.
Fair enough. Okay, very good. Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craingo.
Thank you, Mayor. A quick question on that, if you can remind me, because I know last year we did have the single audit.
Yep.
Is it one single audit for all the different type of governmental funds, or is it depending on if it's a community development block grant, it has its own audit versus ARPA funds?
So the single audit's triggered by $750,000 of expenditures. Our CDBG is much smaller than that, so that never hits that threshold. But then, when we're going to have several $1 million, then Nate's team's going to do sampling, and then they're going to figure out how many transactions they're going to test, et cetera.
Okay, so it's one report addressing those different types, the ones that are over $750,000.
Correct.
Right, Let's remember. Other quick question, more lighthearted. How many hours have you and your team spent on this audit? I know teams from my own workplace spend hours and hours.
Deanne, do you want to give a guess or no? Weeks, yeah, it's weeks. So what happens is when it takes July and August, it takes 2 months for us to close our books, and then the external auditor comes out in September, mid-September. They're on site for 2.5 weeks. Then they go away, and actually for a while they start working on the school districts because there's a conflict with school districts. They have a November 1st deadline. So then we start up again in November, and then for the last month, we've been working with them, getting, dotting I's, crossing T's, making sure that all the testing's proper. And, I think, again, one of the best things that I think through Mark's leadership is that we hired an additional CPA for this, because with the grants, it's really a whole new job with having all these millions of dollars that we've received from the feds.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Finally, just 25 years of this award. I know they're not all your 25 years, but it's a lot of history of good financial work here in this city. But thank you for continuing it in your role now. And we should be proud of the 25th year of receiving that award. And I know we've got several of them in the council boardroom posted for all the years, but
we should. And I was looking at last year's presentation, and I was just saying this to some of the folks back there. 12 months ago, it was mandatory masks. We were all in masks 12 months ago, and it was just interesting to see how far we've maybe come or not. I don't know, but yeah. So we're in a little bit better place right now.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Nate, and Deanne. Thank you. That concludes certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have no carryover items this evening or public hearings, so that takes us to public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. We have 4 people signed up this evening who are Troy residents. As a reminder, you have 3 minutes apiece. When the light turns yellow, you have 1 minute left, and when the light turns red, time is up. The rules are stated in our agenda. It's not a back and forth. It's not a question and answer. Please direct your comments to all of us, and we'll have an opportunity to respond at the conclusion of all public comment. So first up is Michelle Paulus.
Hi, all. Point of clarity, please. So if I am not a resident, but I am a resident, if I was not a resident, when would I speak? Would it be in this cycle or at the end?
It's at the Q section.
At the end?
At the end.
Okay. And because of that, I will be reading from Gwen Markham's statement so that you can hear it now while she is still present, because she has a commitment. So I am Michelle Paulus, but I'm reading Gwen's statement. She says, "Hi, I am Oakland County Commissioner Gwen Markham. I live in Novi. I'm here to speak about the value of having a focus on sustainability for local government. I find it helpful to talk about sustainability from an economic viewpoint. All of us want to save the taxpayer dollars by understanding their energy usage across all parts of the government. A municipality can find ways to switch to renewables where they can save money while reducing their carbon footprint. Another strategy involves the fleet of vehicles operated by the municipality. What is the plan for electrification or other renewable sources going forward? Sustainable land use policies, such as the use of green infrastructure, permeable pavements, tree planting, and other methods can reduce storm water and reduce the heat canopy in areas of high concentration of pavement and buildings. This protects all of us and saves us money. Conversion of acres of green grass to more sustainable indigenous plantings where possibly can save money in maintenance, reduce stormwater, and create a beautiful and diverse landscape. Oakland County has surveyed over 50 buildings and our fleet of over 800 vehicles. We believe that we can lead by example and want to work together with our local communities, such as Troy, to find ways to protect the environment while saving taxpayer dollars. We are working to protect Turtle Woods right here in Troy, hoping to use a grant from the Michigan DNR Trust Fund, which brings me to another very important reason to create a sustainable plan for your community, and that's the infrastructure funding that is becoming available from the federal government. These grants are often competitive and may require matching funds or partnerships. For example, there are federal grants available through organizations like SEMCOG for sustainability. One recent example is fiscal year 2023 Carbon Reduction Program grants, and awarded $25 million in grants to 12 local transit agencies for conversion to renewable energy vehicles and electrification for infrastructure. I respectfully ask...
Consensus to let her finish the letter? Yeah. Go ahead, finish the letter.
Thank you. I respectfully ask the City of Troy to consider the benefit of creating a sustainable group within the city. They can help your community determine what is most important for your residents. They can help develop the short and long-term plans that are so essential to qualify for federal and state grants. They can also coordinate with outside groups and neighboring communities to share ideas and seek funding opportunities together. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Paulus, and thank you, Ms. Markham.
Thank you to you.
All right, next up is Tyler Fox.
How we doing? Jeez. I am not nearly as important as a county commissioner, but I did also write something out, so. All right, well, good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Tyler Fox, and as some of you know, I'm a resident of the city that lives on Milverton Drive, just across the street from Milverton Park. My wife and I have been residents of Troy since 2019. We just purchased our first home earlier this year in the city. Today, I want to take a moment to discuss the sustainability report generated by City Manager Mark Miller and his team. It's item 02 on the agenda. I want to thank the council for directing Mr. Miller to begin looking into this issue. While I believe that there are many findings that were incredibly interesting on the report or the survey, I just want to think the most important takeaway is the fact that every neighboring community that Troy has, from Auburn Hills to Madison Heights, has some organized and formal effort to move their community toward a more greener and more sustainable future. As a resident, I would love to see Troy join these communities in addressing the ongoing climate crisis in a formal and a systemic way. I have the unique opportunity to comment on one of the communities that Mr. Miller surveyed. My brother, Ryan Fox, is the city liaison for the Sustainability Commission at the City of Sterling Heights. Through my brother, I've heard of some of the great projects that the Sterling Sustainability Commission has undertaken. In fact, I'm aware of several environmental and sustainability awards that Sterling has received as a result of creating a sustainability commission. Now, there may be some sibling rivalry in play when I say this, but I firmly believe that anything the city of Sterling Heights can do, the city of Troy can do it better. So that's why, both as a resident hoping to one day have children that will enjoy the natural world around them, and as a competitive brother, I strongly urge the City Council to make and pass a motion to create a sustainability commission here for the city of Troy. And I ask that the council empower this sustainability commission to be able to influence and encourage significant change here in the city. So, thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Next up is Fabrice. Fabrice, when you come up, will you pronounce your last name correctly so I don't butcher it again? I appreciate it. Schmielauskas, maybe? It's close? Is that close? All right.
Schmielauskas.
Oh, okay. There we go.
So thanks to the city manager team for producing your sustainability report, which shows how sustainability initiatives are really becoming mainstream among municipalities. As Mayor Michael Taylor says of Sterling Heights, we pride ourselves on our ability to be innovative, progressive, and forward-thinking in Sterling Heights. So it made absolute sense for us to establish the city's first sustainability commission a few years ago. Now, corporate Troy has moved far ahead of government Troy on this issue, and must expect the municipality where it's based to demonstrate more seriousness about it, I would think. To the automotive engineers in the room, I think we know full well that our businesses in the advanced automotive sector, electrification is existential for their global business, and sustainability is part of their corporate mission. Magna aims to be carbon neutral in its global operations by 2030 and Aptiv by 2040. Among the banks on our flagship road here, Big Beaver and Crooks, Flagstar and Huntington tracked their greenhouse gas emissions, and PNC was ranked in the top 100 most sustainable companies nationally. To the doctors in the room, Beaumont Health aims for all of its healthcare facilities to be carbon neutral as of 2040. These, and also Molina Healthcare, Kelly Services, Inteva Products, Meritor, Horizon Bank, BDO, Skyline Champion, Altair Engineering, all major Troy businesses issue annual sustainability reports or have sustainability websites, which I have sent to you before the meeting. These are large, high-wage employers of the city and a good chunk of the city tax base. Shouldn't we follow their lead, and shouldn't we be sensitive to their expressed corporate priorities? The best way forward seems to me for City Council to create a new committee, a sustainability committee, to advise and make recommendations to city government. It's important, I think, that this not be a one-shot deal, but an ongoing entity that would let the city continuously consider its options as new technologies and federal and state grants, subsidies, new building and energy codes emerge next year and in the coming years, and as our businesses and peer cities move forward with their own sustainability projects, not wanting us to be left behind. To address budgetary concerns, you could commission it to be free or low cost in every way. It could be almost free to operate, staffed by community volunteers with just a few hours a month dedicated by the city manager's office to it. It could be constrained so that its proposals must be budget neutral or cost saving for the city, or that it only consider new city purchases and new building construction and renovation, because that still leaves many opportunities for impact in ways that City Council can tout to the community and make it proud. The Troy schools are already moving forward on sustainability, and time now for Troy City.
Thank you. Good to see you. Next up is Terry McCormick.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all. I am here also to speak on the municipal sustainability report that City Manager Miller put together. A little history, I think, is in order to kind of frame this in the timeline. In early 2019, a group of us began meeting to address why Troy was being left in the dust when surrounding communities were picking up the banner of sustainability. We met with our now county sustainability officer. We drew up a resolution for council. We created a list of no and low-cost actions, and we asked some, I want to be clear on that, some council members for action. Those efforts went nowhere as far as the public knows. For those tempted to say, well, COVID happened, I point out that our neighboring communities on this list that Mr. Miller put together did not let the pandemic stop them from starting or continuing initiatives that put them at the forefront of sound municipal policymaking for our future. I gladly acknowledge the efforts of City Manager Miller and Mayor Baker in getting this summary sustainability report on tonight's agenda for discussion. Much, much more has been going on around the state that Troy can use as models in communities urban, suburban, and rural, rich and poor, right, left, and center, as Troy stands still. Some have taken big steps, some have taken small steps, but they've taken steps. Our community needs to see actionable forward movement in our city. Talk is cheap, and it is far past time for Troy to now walk. We need our leaders to recognize this, push forward, and do the hard work it takes to make Troy the kind of city that will draw in new young people and businesses, as well as keep the ones we have. I urge you all to take that first step now, tonight. and create a permanent sustainability committee to address these issues for tomorrow, for next year, and for the decades to come. Like it or not, climate change is here to stay. We need to address it as a culture change in our city. That is what the best practices of our surrounding communities have done. As residents, we're frustrated with Troy's lack of progress. Troy is so far behind. Respectfully, step up, please. Thank you for your service to our community.
Thank you, Ms. McCormick. That concludes those who have signed up for public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Now's an opportunity for City Council and City Administration to respond or reply. I think I'll go first, and I'll probably go last. So just as a heads up to everybody. Obviously, there are several more of you signed up to speak. The way our rules of the council work, you'll have an opportunity to speak at the end of the meeting. And some of what you say might be preempted by what we're going to talk about now. So just as a heads up on that, I appreciate very much the passion that each of you bring to this, the emails that have been sent. Some of you have sent emails and have appeared in person tonight, and I think it's important. Obviously, we do better as a city when our residents are engaged and involved in a process, and I think that's why you're here tonight. Is to encourage that kind of movement. And I respect that and really value the differences of opinion or a difference of concepts you're bringing to us and the different thoughts you've had. I'm going to play Grinch here for a second. We're not going to create any kind of permanent committee tonight. That's not how we work at this table. We can't do that. I know there's been a request at some point to change the rules and make this an action item, and that just doesn't exist in our government. We can't do it. Sterling Heights, for example, when they created their sustainability committee, it was done by ordinance. And so an ordinance takes a good amount of time at the very least. So I just want to make sure the expectations are lowered a little bit tonight, that no one's going to leave tonight with us having a permanent committee. But that said, we certainly can have a good conversation about how we want to look at doing something like that if we do. And I think even prior to anyone coming tonight, it was something that we'd been thinking about and working on from the standpoint of, you know, we asked for that report at the last meeting, and we knew that it was something we could do moving forward. So we were, before I knew any of you were coming, I already had an idea of how we were going to kind of maybe get consensus and some next steps. So we can talk about that a little bit, but I don't want anyone to think that the city of Troy doesn't take this stuff very seriously and isn't taking it seriously. I mean, just because we're not out there having a parade about it and marching down the street saying all the things we're doing doesn't mean things aren't getting done. Obviously, there's always room to grow and be better, and we've got communities around us that have taken some real proactive steps, mostly because they've also raised taxes on their citizens to do it, and they have the resources to do it. The city of Troy hasn't done that, and but it doesn't mean we're not doing things. And whereas I think we could do more, I never want to lose track of the things that we have done and continue to do. I mean, and I know this sounds silly, but as I walked in tonight, I looked down and there's the trash can sitting outside the door, and it's made from reclaimed milk jugs right down there, right? I mean, so there has been efforts in the past to do the things in our city facilities, and that's just one simple little example. But the other thing I want to make sure you're all aware of is that we do have a sustainable design projects committee out of our planning department that I'll be quite honest, I knew about but wasn't completely sure about until it was came back to my attention today. So I urge you all to look at that, and there's a checklist and there's a committee that works on things, but that's an in-house committee, and I think the idea of having residents involved is definitely something we should look at. So I'm obviously have been talking nonstop for a couple minutes here, and I'm happy to hear from other council members or anyone else on city administration who'd like to reply to start out. I will send it to Councilman Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. I've brought this up in many of our advances and previous goal-setting meetings. I agree with a lot of what was being said, particularly when we look at what other communities have done. I want to make sure that Troy's a leader and that we're at least doing what the other communities have done and perhaps more. I think any way that we can involve citizens that want to volunteer to help this cause, we should enable, if that's a committee, if that's like a committee formed through the city manager. I know we've done that a few times. And I would like it to be something permanent. It's a permanent problem that we need permanent change on. as an engineer in the automotive world, electric cars are coming like a storm, and I really want us to improve our electric infrastructure. I know it's a big thing we've thought about and a big problem, and I'm on board with everything that was discussed here, but I agree with the mayor that there's a process here to make sure this is effective, to make sure we have a clear goal in mind, but I'd love to see more progress on this, so I'm on board.
Thank you, Councilmember Hamilton. Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crankle.
Thank you, Mayor. I spent a lot of time this weekend looking at this report and prepared a few remarks on it, but I think right now is the best time to really address it based on all the input that we have. And something just to share with my colleagues, as well as some of you sitting out there who you may not know, that I do have a bit of a history with sustainability. I claim no expertise, to be clear, but I have touched this topic literally for about a decade, and that's just by virtue of where I've worked. When I was at the World Bank, I worked on about 2 projects. I contributed to 2 pieces of major research that were essentially addressing sustainability in a country where I did my PhD. Past 8.5 years, I've worked for an organization based here in Troy that is a national expert, not just on sustainability, but sustainability working with cities and working with municipalities to help integrate a sustainability lens into all that they do. So I don't claim expertise, but out of that decade of experience of being in these organizations, I think there have been 3 takeaways for me. One is this work is not going away. This work, it will be around. Sustainability will continue, unfortunately, to be an issue, and we do need to act now. I think second is there is a business case to be made for sustainability. And the more that we wait, the less that we have this opportunity to really reap the efficiencies and the savings that can come from addressing this work. And to be clear, that business case looks different in different communities, and that's something that just needs more work to address. But there are opportunities around that. And I think third, just to point out, is that really sustainability functions best when it's not in a silo. And tonight we are kind of talking about it essentially in a silo as a thing. But what I have learned is really sustainability, to be effective, it must be integrated across the work that we're already doing. And some of that, as we've heard, we are doing. But that's how it's going to function best. So the question is, what do you do? How do you get there? Like, what is the next step? And that is what I've racked my brain over as I read this report this weekend. So I'm not an expert, so I reached out to some friends and colleagues who are experts. So I reached out to Erin Quittel, who is Oakland County's, she's their sustainability officer, started her career in a municipality. She, as far as I know, was one of the first sustainability managers in the state of Michigan in a municipality. So we had a great conversation, and and I asked her about, well, how to start this work for a city like ours that really hasn't concretely in an organized way moved it forward. What would be the best first step? I have my ideas, but what does she think? Also reached out to some colleagues at Kresge, where I work, and to be clear, I have colleagues, one of whom is now in the White House as a senior advisor on these issues. So I have some brilliant colleagues. And a couple of them that I did speak with, along with Erin from the county, the common consensus is to start with some sort of community committee, to start with some kind of sustainability committee. And the reason why that's important is that's where then you're going to hear the voice of residents. It needs to come, and there needs to be a bottom-up voice and a role for that support and that input in what you do. So that was, of all those different folks I spoke to, and I also did reach out to some of our neighbors. I've spoken with Mayor Barnett, north of us, in listening to some of what they've done. And really, there is a role. And so I recognize, a committee we can't create overnight, but I would hope that we can find some kind of consensus to be on a path to create a committee. And in my mind, a first step to be on that path is to be able to find some consensus for city management, to go into details of what are the logistics? What are the procedures? And we have a lot to pull from. As we said, just about every neighbor to the left, right, north, south, just about every neighbor does have a sustainability committee. But what would it take to reach out and be able to find some of that and figure out what fits us in Troy? So I would hope that at some point by the end of tonight, we could find some consensus, at least to say that we want to take a step towards some efforts to create a committee.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crankle. Sorry, I'm making some notes here, because I think I'll seek consensus at the end after some comments, and we'll work on it. But sorry. Additional council comments? Any city administration reply or comment to the public comment? No pressure.
No, not right now.
Okay. Well, then I'll continue just for a minute or two. I talked to Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crainga about this issue on Friday, and before, like I said, I knew any of you were coming. And one of the things we talked about was this very thing of looking at having a committee. And I'm fully supportive of that concept. I always am cautious, however, of what it can do to city administration. And while it's a volunteer committee, absolutely, it still requires, if it's a government committee, it requires our government oversight, resources, and what all of you don't offer, most of you probably don't realize, is how stretched thin we are on a lot of issues. Our top department heads and all their teams are working on overdrive on so many projects right now. So I'm very cautious to add more, and yet obviously it's an important issue and needs to be addressed. And so we have to find a way to do it. So I think best consensus would be to, if I can seek consensus from council, to ask city management to maybe initially come back with procedures for creating different forms of a committee, whether that's a permanent committee, whether that's something like the Green Space Subcommittee or any other form, just some different options for us to look at. That's the first thing I think I'd like to have consensus on it. Is there consensus for that?
Mayor.
Yeah, Councilmember Brooks.
So you had brought up the fact that we already have a sustainability aspect in our parks, or no?
In our zoning ordinance.
In our zoning ordinance.
Design projects.
So, but it's closed right now to employees, is that?
That committee, my understanding, it came late today, but our question, Mark, do you want to speak a little bit on that? Or can you speak a little on that? Go ahead.
So in our zoning ordinance, which regulates land use and development, the sustainable, I'm trying to remember the exact terminology, but there is a provision in the ordinance which allows the Sustainable Development Committee to meet and make recommendations to the Planning Commission. And what this does is there are certain standards which, if you do certain sustainable efforts, such as, let's say, where stormwater is absorbed into the ground as opposed to going directly into the stormwater system, in the IB zoning districts, then you can be permitted to have parking in front of your building where it's not permitted elsewhere. So this is more a tool to encourage sustainable development techniques, and there are some incentives to do that. And so this was really dealing with development, land development applications, not the city on the whole.
I see. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. And there is a whole, these question and answers will be on our website, but there's a whole sustainable development checklist for those of you who want to take a look and see just the stuff that we have, just so you are fully aware. So I think we have consensus to at least get that initial information. Eventually, I think, to me, we should probably then have a study session at some point and then move in that direction. I mean, that's traditionally the path those things take. I don't think we necessarily need to get that on the books tonight or anything. Obviously, we'll see what city management gets back to us. Obviously, I think we won't have a problem finding volunteers for such a committee if it's in the future. So I'm not too worried about that, whereas sometimes we are worried about the situations. But it is important, Mark, I think that if you can address the constraints it puts on your team to have, or the process involved in that, because I know that there is more than even we see, basically.
Currently, there is no staff dedicated for sustainability within the city. And if you look at some of the other communities that I'm familiar with, Royal Oak has a specific person that's their responsibility. So if, let's just say we even have a committee, we're going to have to find someone who is not, we don't have anyone in-house with expertise to do this. Someone would have to take this over and do it along with all the other things. Right. While we're really focusing more on our economic sustainability, as we're working with City Council to find other revenue sources for a lot of our other needs. So, I mean, with that being said, yes, we can do a study meeting, but what I would like council to do is send us, the manager's office, what you would like to discuss, where you would like to go, some of your ideas related to sustainability. Because right now, I don't really know what council wants exactly. Yeah, we can have a committee, but what is that committee going to do? What are your desires, or what would you like to explore? So, in the time, we'll be coming back if this is a consensus. We'll come back to schedule a date. But what I want council really to do is develop some of your own thoughts and ideas where we should go and transmit that to the manager's office. And we can assemble that when we get to the possible study meeting.
Got that? All right. I think that's, Fabrice, you emailed us earlier a lot of the corporate Troy resident or Troy businesses that have already taken this on. I think we're really fortunate to have a private sector that is embracing it so much, which I think helps a lot. I mean, we're not a government trying to convince the private sector that they need to do this. It looks like it's going the other way around, at least from your perspective, which is unique, and I think it helps. And I happen to speak to a couple of prominent real estate developers and business owners in the city today, and if they don't already have a public sustainability plan, they're working on one currently. So it is definitely something that's happening a lot. I also talked to Mayor Mike Taylor today in Sterling Heights, and he interestingly, the quote that was read, that's definitely his public statement quote that came at the end of all of it. But, he was very clear that in Sterling Heights, it was very much administration driven because they had the resources from the staffing perspective to make that happen. And they knew it was something that needed to be done. And we're in a little bit different situation here. So I was interested by that. And again, they created an ordinance, and it's all on their website. It's pretty clear to see everything. But I'm happy that we're here at a time talking about this, and it's not 2019 and we're still talking about corruption and FBI investigations, which may have inhibited a little bit of this other conversation, or 20 or 21 talking about COVID. So the fact that we're having this conversation tonight maybe means that we're in a different place to actually address some of these things. And I know that sounds kind of jarring, but that's a reality for those of us who have lived through all those years, right? So, all right. If that's it for now, that'll conclude the City Council and City Administration response and reply to public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. We have no postponed items this evening, so we move on to regular business. First up is I-1, Board and Committee appointments. There are no mayoral appointments this evening. I'll turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga for the one City Council appointment.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move the reappointment of Thomas Gordon II to the Employees Retirement System Board of Trustees, Retiree Healthcare Benefits Plan and Trust for the term expiring December 31st, 2025.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga, supported by Councilmember Hamilton, that we approve the reappointment of Thomas Gordon II to the Employees Retirement System Board of Trustees, Retiree Healthcare Benefits Plan and Trust for the term expiring December 31st, 2025. Any discussion? City Manager Miller.
Just a quick note of fact, the retirement board is made up of a variety of different types of persons and how they get to that board. Mr. Gordon was elected as an employee, and so you're confirming that election of the members of the retirement system, whether that be DB or non-DB members.
Thank you for that point of clarification. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next up are board and committee nominations. Mayoral nominations are first, and I do have a couple. Need to find where I put them. All right. I'll move the nomination of Sadia Sherigne to the Global Troy Advisory Committee for the term expiring October 30th, 2023.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga, that we approve the nomination of Sadia Sherigne for the Global Troy Advisory Committee for the term expiring October 30th, 2023. Any discussion? Ironically, that was Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga's old seat that we just finally filled. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes. Motion carries. And I'd like to move the nominations or renominations of Thomas Krent and Mariana Parakis to the Planning Commission for the terms expiring December 31st, 2025, and a new nomination of Tyler Fox for the term expiring December 31st, 2025.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve the nomination to the Planning Commission of Thomas Krent, Mariana Parakis, and Tyler Fox for the terms expiring December 31st, 2025. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig.
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Motion carries. That concludes mayoral nominations this evening, so I'll turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig for city council nominations.
Thank you. I have several.
Oh.
The first, I would like to move the renomination of Mark Ocharziak to the Employees Retirement System Board of Trustees, Retiree Health Care Benefits Plan and Trust for the term expiring December 31st, 2025.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve the nomination of Mark Ozarzak as the City of Troy retiree to the Employees Retirement System Board of Trustees, Retiree Healthcare Benefits Plan and Trust for the term expiring December 31st, 2025. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig.
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Second, I would like to move the renomination of W. Ken Voigt to the Historic District Commission for the term expiring March 1st, 2025.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve the renomination of W. Kent Voigt to the Historic District Commission for the term expiring March 1st, 2025. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Parks and Recreation. I would like to move the nomination of Jasper Gill to the Parks and Recreation Board for the term expiring September 30th, 2025.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve the nomination of Jasper Gill to the Parks and Recreation Board for the term expiring September 30th, 2025. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig.
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Final one. I would like to move the renominations of John Foster, Charles Niffen, Al Soriano to the Volunteer Firefighter Incentive Plan Board for the terms expiring December 31st, 2025.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig and supported by Councilmember Hamilton, that we approve the renominations of John Foster, Charles Niffen, and Al Soriano to the Volunteer Firefighter Incentive Plan Board for the terms expiring December 31st, 2025. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig.
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Motion carries. I don't think there's anything left, right? All right, that concludes City Council nominations for this evening. Next up is I3. There's no closed session requested this evening. So move on to I4, Budget Amendment and Standard Purchasing Resolution 8, Best Value, Emergency Medical and First Responder Services. That'll be introduced by our Fire Chief, Pete Hullinger. Hi, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. So tonight I bring forth the new EMS contract for the City of Troy. The current contract with Alliance Mobile Health runs through the end of this month through December 31st. So several months ago, the city formulated a committee, including the police, fire department, city administration, They got together, put together the RFP that was put out on the Mitten website for agencies to bid. We had one response to the EMS bid, which was Alliance Mobile Health. So after the bid opening, the committee got together, met with Alliance, discussed levels of service that are being provided to the city of Troy to see if any changes were needed. Based on that discussion and the committee's discussion, we did decide to make a minor change in the current level of EMS to the city of Troy. Currently, we run 2 paramedic first responders 24/7 with a third unit during peak call volume times, depending on the day and the time of day. Moving forward with the new contract, we're going to add that third unit 24/7 as well. So starting January 1st, we'll have 3 paramedic first responder units running 24/7. With that comes some additional cost, which includes the budget amendment that's presented as well. So here tonight is Vince from Alliance, as well as some of his employees, as well as Emily and Frank from the city, if you guys have any questions that we can address for you.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions from council? Councilmember Hoderick.
I will move I-4, Budget Amendment and Standard Purchasing Resolution 8, Best Value Emergency Medical and First Responder Services as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Hoderick, supported by Councilmember Brooks, that we approve I-4 Budget Amendment and Standard Purchasing Resolution 8, Best Value Emergency Medical and First Responder Services as printed in the agenda packet. Discussion. Councilmember Hoderick.
You know, I will be supporting this. One of the critical features, obviously, of our public safety that we offer in the city of Troy comes through our partnership with Alliance. Many of you may have seen the article in the Troy Times that talks about, not only in Troy, but everywhere, the need for folks to pursue emergency response and to look into possible careers in this type of work. We hear about staffing shortages everywhere. We'll think about communities and how they're trying to make sure that when you call 911 because you have a health emergency, you need to be able to have that response. We need people to be interested in those roles. And I just want to mention that I know Alliance is great at that training. These are great career opportunities, huge ways to contribute to our communities and our society and to help take care of one another. There is a shortage. It's a huge challenge for not just Troy, but all around. And if you know of folks looking for a pathway, interested in a career, seeking a way to contribute, who might be inclined in this regard, please give it some consideration. Feel free to contact the city to help connect them with places to learn more and to pursue that, because it's a critical need. Keeps me awake at night. And I've seen reports from cities all over the nation in the same predicament. So please give that careful consideration.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoderick. That's an important message for everybody. Any additional comments? I of course, will be supporting Vince, and I enjoyed this partnership we've had with the Alliance for as long as I've been on council, and certainly preceding that as well. And it is such an important key component to our public safety. We hear a lot about our wonderful police officers and our firefighters, but the EMS is often what really can make or break someone's life in an instant. We know that, and we know what a value you bring to our community, and we really are supportive of your team. And I again, like Ellen said, I know, like everybody, employees are difficult. Finding employees are difficult, and if there is the person out there that's looking for that path, that's a great public service announcement there, Ellen, because I know it's affecting everybody, and this is one place we don't want it to affect. That's not a great place to have a shortage. So I look forward to continuing to work with Alliance, and am very thankful for all you're doing for our community. The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt? Yes. Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next up is the I-5 2023 City Council meeting schedule, and that'll be introduced by Bob Bruner.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, I'd like City Council to consider scheduling 2 special meetings in 2023. Trying to be proactive and get these on the calendar now. The first one is for the City Council's personnel evaluations of the city manager and the city attorney. The proposed date is Tuesday, March 21st, 2023. That's the first date that fit in the timeline that the consultants put together, which is the next agenda item. So if for whatever reason Tuesday, March 21st, 2023 doesn't work for everyone, we can postpone a decision on that meeting date, come back and do it next week after everybody's had an opportunity to weigh in on dates. The second is way in advance to schedule the 2023 City of Troy advance. We just finished that meeting last month in November, but it's not too soon to get it on the calendar for 2023. And we're really trying to thread the needle and get that done in between after the election and before the last regular meeting in December. And that meeting being on a Saturday, there's limited options. So those are presented here for your consideration tonight.
Thanks, Bob. Any questions? I'm going to move I-5, resolve that Troy City Council shall hold a special meeting for personnel evaluations on Tuesday, March 21st, 2023 at 6 p.m. in the council boardroom or as otherwise provided by the City Council Rules of Procedure. Be it further resolved that Troy City Council shall hold a special meeting for the 2023 City of Troy Advance on Saturday, November 18th, 2023 at 8 a.m. in the Troy Community Center or as otherwise provided by the City Council Rules of Procedure. Be it finally resolved that the Troy City Council may reschedule regular meetings and/or schedule additional special meetings in accordance with the City Charter and Michigan Open Meetings Act.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Hamilton, that we approve I-5 as read into the record, 2023 City Council meeting schedule. Discussion, I'll start. I picked November 18th. I thought December's too late. Looks like Teresa has a problem with it.
I do have a conflict with it. I didn't know that we were actually going to pick the date right now.
Okay.
So I thought that we were going to decide and email.
I threw it out there, and we don't have to schedule it tonight. But so you have a conflict with that date?
I do. A hard conflict with November 8th.
Okay.
So sorry.
No, that's fine. 4 of us might not even be here, so so we could be sticking the meeting on somebody else. That's a lot of fun. Knock on wood, I guess. I don't know.
Whatever.
So the December meeting dates.
I know, I didn't like December either.
I don't think they're great. The December 2nd, or was that the other option? That's not that it matters. It's the morning after the Christmas tree lighting, but so it's a later night and an early morning, and the 9th seems really late, and it's in the holidays, but I don't know. Can't look at our calendars, as Councilmember Erickson Galt would remind us up here on our phones. Councilmember Hoderick?
Well, I did check. I was open all 3 dates, or I would have indicated conflict. I don't know where everybody else stood on the other dates.
City Manager Miller.
Mayor, Council, you could just approve the March 21st date and then not act on those other dates and come back if people can't look at their calendars.
We could do that, but is it going to make a difference? Does anybody, do you know now? I mean, does anybody else have any conflicts on the other dates?
I'm fine with that.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig.
Yes, as I stated before, the later it gets in December, the worse, but I'm open to December 2nd if that works best for others.
Does anybody have a conflict with December 2nd other than my tired eyes after the tree lighting the night before?
Sorry.
I'm kidding. It's fine. All right, so I'll move to amend I-5 2023 City Council meeting schedule and change the City of Troy Advance from November 18th, 2023 to December 2nd, 2023.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve the amendment to I-5 2023 City Council meeting schedule as read into the record. Discussion on the amendment. All right, the vote on the amendment, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes. Motion carries on the amendment. So now we're back to I-5 as amended. Any further discussion on that? All right, the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, I-6 is personnel evaluation consulting services, and that'll also introduced by Bob Bruno.
Thank you. Now that the meeting has been scheduled, you have an opportunity to hire the consultant, rehire the consultant to help facilitate the process. City staff conducted an RFP process back in 2019. James Petrino, working through GovHR, was the only respondent. City Council, I believe, has been through 2 evaluation processes under that first contract, the way it worked out, and now we're kind of on a year-to-year basis. The dollar amount is something that the city manager has the authority to approve, but being that these services are for you, the City Council, we thought it important to bring it for your consideration.
Thanks, Bob. Any questions? Someone want to move the resolution? Councilmember Hamilton?
I'll move I-6 Personnel Evaluation Consulting Services as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Hamilton, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve I-6 Personnel Evaluation Consulting Services as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? Councilmember Hoderick?
I'll be supporting this. I think sometimes when people see us hiring consulting, that can be given a little bit of a side eye. Is that, something that we really need to do? And this is just now becoming an annual reminder that this is a process that we instituted to improve our ability to provide the oversight that we're supposed to for the 2 employees of the city that report to City Council. We report to the residents, and I will just say to the residents, this is a tool that your City Council needs to shepherd and to be a good steward of that employment practice. I have been on council long enough, and I believe Mayor Baker and Councilwoman Abraham remember what it was like before we had this service and before we did this consulting work. It was not right. This serves our community and our residents and our taxpayers, and importantly, our 2 employees that we oversee in a really constructive, professional manner. I will be voting in support, and I wanted to create a little understanding, if this is new to you, as to what it is and why we do it. Thank you.
Thank you. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Motion carries. That concludes regular business this evening. Next up is the consent agenda. We did have a late submittal for J6 with a change in language. Anyone like to pull an item from the consent agenda for further discussion? Councilmember Abraham.
I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda, including the late submittal J6, as printed in the agenda and on the yellow sheet.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as printed in the agenda packet and as supplemented by J6 as a late submittal. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig?
Yes.
Motion carries. If you're here for a consent agenda item this evening, all have passed. Next up are memorandums and future council agenda items. I have none to announce this evening. There's nobody signed up for public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses, so no need for reply. We have no council referrals. And so we move on to reports. We spoke quite lengthily about O2A earlier. Are there any other comments on reports this evening? Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to highlight O3A, in which our amazing city clerk once again highlights how well our most recent election was conducted, and also to applaud our city clerk and her diligent, hardworking staff on making sure that elections run smoothly and safely in the city. I think she is truly one of our unsung heroes. Well, we sing her praises all the time, but I think a lot of people who just show up to drop off their ballot or at the polls don't understand how much work goes into making sure that this goes well. And I especially appreciated that she highlighted all the dozens of other city staff who participate and make sure that this works well. And thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you. I also appreciated the city staff members that were listed. I thought that was a really interesting look. So thank you for that. Additional comments on reports? All right, council comments. All right. Next up is public comment for items on or not on the agenda for members of the public outside of Troy, not residents of Troy, and not from Troy businesses. We do have several signed up. We'll see what happens. First up is Thomas Yazbek. Same rules apply as earlier. The 3 minutes are given. When the light turns yellow, you have 1 minute left, and when the red light happens, it's done.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and the council, for letting me speak. I'm actually a former resident of Troy. Actually, Mr. Fox might like to know I actually grew up on Milverton Street. So, but that's a fun fact. I still spend a lot of my time and money in Troy. I actually bought a sub at Pepe's Pizza on the way here. So I'm here to talk a little bit. I'm here to parrot a little bit of what other people said about the Sustainability Committee, but also kind of take another spin on it. I'm with the Oakland County Climate Campaign. I also work as a outreach specialist for Transportation Riders United, which has been working for 20 years to improve public transportation in Metro Detroit. And I'm sure many of you voted on the smart millage question in the election this year, and voters in Troy, of course, voted with a pretty large margin for that, which is, to me, sounds like a vote for sustainability, because public transportation is environmentally sustainable. It helps our economy here. We have several other communities that are moving forward with sustainability plans. We also have Oakland County moving forward with the sustainability plan. So I think, having a dedicated sustainability committee in the city of Troy will help ensure that there will be more transportation benefits coming. There needs to be a way to make sure that they're benefiting Troy and Troy's residents, and I think having a dedicated structure for that helps. I'm also younger. I'm 27, and there are a lot of young people, including young people in Troy, who I've interacted with. They've helped me as I've worked for Transportation Riders United. We were pushing for a yes vote on that public transit campaign. And a lot of young people came out because they value things like access to public transit. They value green spaces. They value walkability. They value sustainability in the buildings that they choose to live in. So young people are really concerned about the future, and it definitely shows a commitment to the future when a city has a sustainability committee on paper in there. There's a lot of consensus among many of the neighboring communities of Troy. I think Troy and Oakland County Green, which is another name for the climate campaign that I'm involved with, we held a workshop where a lot of these chairs of these commissions got together and made it clear that each city needs to take its own approach on this. So I really hope that this discussion is not over and that the city of Troy takes concrete steps towards environmental sustainability. I really think that's the right thing to do. And if all our neighbors are doing it, let's have Troy join in too. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yazbek. I believe Commissioner Markham is gone and her statement's been read. So we'll move on to Woody Gontina.
Good evening. I'm Woody Gontina, a previous Troy resident, albeit only until the age of 7. I currently live in Royal Oak and serve as the vice chair of the Royal Oak Environmental Advisory Board. I'm excited and encouraged that conversations about sustainability are happening in our neighbor city of Troy. The Royal Oak Environmental Advisory Board is made up of 11 appointed volunteer members, along with a portion of a city staff individual. We advise the City Commission on policy and initiatives related to sustainability. In May, Royal Oak approved its first Sustainability and Climate Action Plan. Many of the goals of this plan will require regional collaboration to effect the change that is necessary. Because of that, we have met with many neighboring cities like Birmingham and Ferndale to discuss how we can help those cities achieve their sustainability goals as well. Residents of Huntington Woods and Clawson routinely attend our board meetings to learn and exchange ideas. I'm also grateful that we all live in a county that recognizes the importance of sustainability, and for the first time in this year's budget, Oakland County has sustainability efforts and resources specifically budgeted for. I encourage you to continue your discussions around sustainability within Troy, with the hope you may establish your own board or committee that we may collaborate with. Your community will support this. Just ask them. That was a critical initial step for us to validate our efforts in Royal Oak. We have learned a lot in the work that we have done in Royal Oak. Many cities and resources are available to help Troy forge your own path forwards towards a more sustainable city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gontina. Next up is Amanda Herzog.
Hi, I'm Amanda Herzog. I'm a Royal Oak resident and chair of the Environmental Advisory Board. I'm here tonight to enthusiastically support the conversation that you're having around the City Council developing a sustainability committee. The Royal Oak Environmental Advisory Board was established in the 90s when a group of residents rallied around wanting citywide recycling. Our mission is broader now. We're ordinanced. We advise and assist with environmental sustainability efforts in the city, commission, and community members. We're appointed, we're passionate experts, but we're volunteers. So we don't have a budget and we don't pay, but we see our role as partners with city staff. In May, the Royal Oak City Commission approved the Royal Oak Sustainability and Climate Action Plan, and this is a living document and a roadmap for our city to be forward-thinking. With growing concerns like flooding and power outages, we want protection of our assets and promote public health. We are looking at sustainability through the lens of people, planet, and profit, and meeting the needs of our present without compromising the ability for future generations to meet their needs. We understand that sustainability and climate action work doesn't happen just within our city limits, that all of us together can make a greater impact. Now is a great time for a sustainability committee. The county has a sustainability office. Conversations are happening in the region around collaborating on these more complex issues, and state and federal funding will help with implementation. We are happy to help you on your sustainability journey. We look at it as a journey and not a destination, and we are, please use us as a resource. We could have conversations about our efforts and how we impact the efforts of the city staff, and we're very mindful of the capacity of the city staff in what we try to implement. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Herzog. Finally, we have Michael Sklar.
Good evening, Mayor Baker, council members, and other officials from the city. I am here speaking on behalf of Turn Oakland County Green, which is a coalition of groups in the area that are trying to do exactly what our name suggests, Turn Oakland County Green, and move us farther along on our sustainability journey. I live in Huntington Woods. We've had an environmental advisory commission for a number of years. It's built on the same model that you've heard from Royal Oak. We're volunteers. We've been able to provide advice to the city. We've been able to really provide expertise to the city based on our professional backgrounds, our academic backgrounds, and our experience. And in doing so, we've helped move the city along. I just want to encourage you to consider this as a model and something that you could perhaps build on, again, without a lot of investment, but with potentially huge benefits. You can build on the sustainability report. It can be used to coordinate its implementation. It can be used to help create visioning for next steps, what comes after moving forward on the report, and coordinate the actions across the city. We've heard earlier today, earlier this evening, you mentioned all the various things that are going on in the city that touch on sustainability, which is great, but finding a way to pull them together and coordinate them would be a significant benefit. And finally, I just want to encourage you to grasp the future, actually grasp the present. We really can't afford not to. There's billions of dollars coming in federal grants to promote sustainability. Communities all across Michigan are getting in line to get their share. I hope Troy is one of them. And then I'd also offer that there's real risks in not jumping into this effort in an aggressive way. Some of you may remember 2014 when we had the terrible flood that created so much damage in our area. Those kinds of intense rainstorms are going to only become more common, and our infrastructure is not built to handle them. So we need to move aggressively to make our communities more resilient as well as more sustainable. And finally, I know that the thought of spending money on the environment sometimes seems like a luxury, but it's not. After all, the economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the ecology. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sklar. Appreciate all of you signed up for public comment for items on or not on the agenda for members of the public outside of Troy, not residents. We appreciate you sticking around as well, the way our rules are set up. There's no closed session this evening, so with that, we are adjourned.